It's big time. Hey.
When you think of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the capital city of Sarajevo probably comes to mind first. However, there is another city in this country that is just as popular as Sarajevo, and that is undoubtedly MOSTAR. This is a very popular place, especially for tourists. So much so that people who want to explore Bosnia and Herzegovina make sure that after Sarajevo, they make time for MOSTAR. For example, we found that 3 full days were enough for Sarajevo. MOSTAR can be explored in 1 day if you are in a hurry, or in 2 full days for a more comfortable trip. We did just that and spent 2 days exploring MOSTAR. There are 3 main ways to get to MOSTAR from Sarajevo. The first is to rent a car in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is really cheap. You can rent a car for an average of 80 euros for a week. With your rental car, you can drive 100 kilometers from the capital Sarajevo to MOSTAR in 2 hours. This is the most comfortable and stress-free way to travel. Another option is to take the train between the 2 cities. Although the train offers an authentic travel experience, it is not very efficient due to the limited number of departures. The third and most popular option is to take a bus from the capital to MOSTAR. This is the least comfortable and most tedious way to travel. You will travel in buses that are on average 20 years old, passing through narrow intersections at an average speed of 40 kilometers per hour. So, a trip that would normally take 1 hour on the highway takes almost 3 hours. Although they accept credit card payments at the Sarajevo terminal, the officer at the MOSTAR bus terminal refused to accept credit card payments. Then they asked us for cash. In my opinion, such a request is truly absurd in this day and age. We can understand that private businesses do not accept credit cards and want to avoid taxes. However, it is quite strange that companies do not accept credit cards. It gives the impression that the country is 10 years behind in terms of development. The good thing is that hotels or pensions in MOSTAR are cheaper than in Sarajevo. While the average price for a hotel in Sarajevo is 80 euros per night, you can rent a studio apartment in MOSTAR for 50 euros per night. Let's say you somehow make it to MOSTAR, and you want to get a feel for the area as soon as you arrive. If we take a look at the map, we can see that it is located in the south of the country and south of the capital Sarajevo. Although the population varies according to different sources, we can say that about 150,000 people live in this city. The city covers an area of only 97 square kilometers. In this sense, MOSTAR is a city where you can walk from one end to the other. However, we should also mention that MOSTAR is the largest city in the Herzegovina region of the country. A bright blue river called Neretva runs through the middle of the city. If you go there, you will see that the river is extremely blue and has a strong current. If we analyze the city as east and west of the river, it is necessary to say that more Christians live on the western side of the river. The origin of this Christian population is mainly Croatian and Bosnian. If you cross to the eastern side of the river, you will see an increase in the number of mosques and women wearing headscarves. At the same time, the houses are more detached and built in a mountainous area. These people make up the Muslim majority part of MOSTAR. The main attraction of the city, the MOSTAR Bridge, also known as Stari Most, is the main reason why the city attracts so many tourists. What do you think is the significance of the MOSTAR Bridge that makes the city so valuable and popular? If we take a brief look at the history of this region, we must explain that this bridge was originally built in 1566 during the Ottoman Empire. Since its construction, the bridge has remained intact and actively used for 427 years. It is said that 456 huge-shaped stones were used in the construction of the bridge. The fact that the MOSTAR Bridge has remained intact for hundreds of years has made it the main symbol of the city over time. In fact, it is said that the name of the city comes from this bridge. Moreover, after the bridge was built, the Herzegovina region became an important trading city and gained significance. Unfortunately, this historical heritage suffered irreparable damage during the bloody wars in Bosnia and Herzegovina in the 1990s. In 1992, the Serbs first tried to destroy the bridge. In 1993, Croatian tanks launched attacks aimed at causing greater and more destructive damage to the bridge. In November 1993, the bridge could no longer withstand the damage and was completely destroyed. After being damaged and destroyed, the bridge began to appear in this condition. The massive stone blocks of the bridge were submerged in the waters of the Neretva River. But the bridge had been a symbol of tolerance and culture for centuries. It was a symbol that united Muslims and Croats and promoted goodwill. But the destruction of the bridge during the war signaled a desire to reject the city's multicultural heritage. After the war, the British built a temporary iron bridge to replace the destroyed one. Other bridges in the Mostar area were also destroyed during this period, and it was necessary to somehow connect the two banks of the river. With the support of UNESCO and the World Bank, the bridge was rebuilt in 1997 according to the original design. The original stones of the bridge were removed from the riverbed by cranes, and those in good condition were reused. In July 2004, the bridge was completely rebuilt and reopened to the public, remaining true to the original design. In 2005, the bridge was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List, and today it is the biggest attraction in Mostar. Currently, the bridge is 24 meters high and 30 meters long. It is 4 meters wide. There is also a tradition connected with the bridge. According to the tradition, the men of Mostar used to jump off the bridge before their weddings to prove their courage to their fiancés or girlfriends. Today this tradition continues, but now it is mostly done for tourist purposes. Professional divers climb to the top of the bridge to attract the attention of tourists and collect donations. Then they jump into the river. These jumps really enchant the tourists around the bridge and offer them a visual feast. In return, the divers ask the spectators for donations on a voluntary basis. It should also be noted that although Mostar is now administered by a multi-ethnic government, the ethnic divisions that began during the war in the 1990s still exist. Croats live on the west side of the river, while Muslims live on the east side. Serbs, on the other hand, largely left the city during the war. Let us analyze both the Muslim part of the city and the non-tourist area where Croats live through our own footage. As soon as you enter the eastern part of Mostar, you will notice the presence of Muslims. You will probably see women with headscarves and long dresses covering their bodies coming from the opposite direction. Most of the houses and mosques they live in seem to be lined up on the slopes of the mountains. In the central part of the eastern side of the river, there is a single-lane asphalt road with many shops along it. Some of these shops are privately owned bakeries, florists, cafes, and other businesses, while others are banks and government offices. There is a bus system for transportation within the city, but it is not very convenient. More precisely, it is not preferred by the locals. This is because Mostar is really a small place, and most of the families living there have their own cars. Some people even use electric scooters or bicycles to get to work and school. If you want to explore the bazaar, you will see people riding bicycles from one place to another. The reality of beggars, which is inevitable in the Balkans, will not leave you alone in this city. The beggars are mostly from the Gypsy community. These people do not resemble Croats or Muslim Bosniaks. Gypsies often push their children towards you and ask you for money. Some of the children are so bold that they will reach right into your pocket. For this reason, I recommend that you pay attention to beggar children. If you look at the faces of the local people around you, they seem a little sullen, perhaps due to the effects of the changing weather conditions. People seem to be living in prosperity and peace, but they seem to be lacking a little joy in life. I have watched the locals closely, and unless they are trying to sell you something, they don't smile much. They have a quiet and steady daily routine. Most people are tall. The majority of local men and women in Mostar were taller than 170 centimeters. They are tall and slim. I did not see obesity in the city. Most of the children, adults, and elderly people in the city walk everywhere, so they are always on the move. People move around a lot, so they don't seem to have weight problems. On the other hand, women in Bosnia and Herzegovina have another admirable characteristic. I saw this clearly in both Sarajevo and Mostar. There is no occupational segregation between women and men. In Sarajevo, for example, I saw women barbers cutting men's hair. In Mostar, I saw women working in restaurants and cafes carrying heavy crates of drinks and carrying them long distances. People are really hardworking and trying to earn money. But if you ask me if they make good money, I would say no. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, if you are not the owner of a business and you are just an employee, your monthly income in Mostar is between 700 and 1,000 euros at the most. People earn less than 1,000 euros a month and work about 10 hours a day. Moreover, the main source of income in the country is the tourist service sector. Since Bosnia and Herzegovina is not a globally productive country, the living and economic conditions are not very good. Therefore, wherever you go in the Mostar Bazaar, you will see shops related to the service sector. While some sell souvenirs, the majority of businesses are food and beverage related. There are many pizzerias, ice cream parlors, and meat restaurants. Restaurants in the Mostar Bazaar are more expensive than those in Sarajevo. In Sarajevo, you will pay an average of 6 or 8 euros for a portion of meat. But in Mostar, there are restaurants along the river. If you order food at these restaurants, you should expect to pay around 15 euros per person. As a result, those traveling on a limited budget usually eat in local restaurants away from the bridge. On the other hand, the most popular place for tourists to take pictures in Mostar is, of course, the view of the bridge. It is only natural that they want to take pictures. People fly thousands of kilometers to see this bridge and take pictures to their heart's content. When asked where the best photos are taken, people prefer the riverbank below the bridge. You have to be quick if you want to take pictures there, because someone could come at you at any moment. Walking on the bridge is a bit difficult. There are protruding and numerous horizontal stones on the bridge floor. If you walk without looking at the ground, you will definitely step on these stones and risk falling. Also, the bridge is always crowded. Therefore, you have to be careful not to bump into the people around you and try to walk without stepping on the stones. Looking at the faces of tourists, you can see that the majority of tourists visiting Mostar are Turks, Japanese, and people from neighboring Balkan countries. In fact, it is easy to tell which country people come from by the languages they speak as you pass by. Another beauty of the city is its atmosphere, which will take you away from all your worries. In many places in Mostar, you will hear the sound of a constantly flowing river. Moreover, you will see lush green trees all around you and encounter a clean environment. If you come to Bosnia and Herzegovina from a country with polluted air, you will feel the difference in quality when you breathe the clean air of that country in Mostar. Most of those who visit Mostar for tourist purposes might think that the city consists only of the bridge and the buildings around it. However, in the western part of the city, there is a really modern life. If you visit the Christian part of Mostar, you will see many Croatian flags in the streets. This is another indication that Croats live in the western part of the city. I highly recommend visiting the non-tourist areas of the city. You will see that many of the buildings are bullet-ridden, just like in Sarajevo. These structures have been preserved since the war and have not been restored. The use of vehicles in the Croatian part of the city is also quite modern. You will rarely hear car horns, and when you cross a pedestrian crossing, cars coming from the opposite direction will always give you the right of way. In this sense, we can say that the people of Mostar are educated and have a traffic culture. Also, the streets are mostly clean, and there is no litter on the ground. The asphalt looks quite new and seems to have been renewed within the last 5 years. The price of gasoline at the gas stations is 2 Bosnian marks per liter, so you can think of the average price per liter as 1 euro. On this basis, you can compare the gasoline prices in Mostar with those in your country. If we look at the buildings where Croats live, they prefer high-rise apartment buildings, unlike Muslims. Muslims in the eastern part of the city live in more detached houses that resemble village houses. The buildings in which Croats live are on average 30 years old. Most of them date back to the Yugoslav era and still look solid. The exteriors of the buildings are faded and in need of painting. However, people in the Balkans do not place much importance on the exterior of buildings. They invest more in the interiors. So, when you enter a building that looks faded and old from the outside, you will notice that. You will see that people have spent money on the interiors of their homes and live in modern, well-designed homes. There are also continuous artistic drawings on the sides and around the buildings. These drawings do not look professional and were probably done randomly by people on the street. Nevertheless, the artistic drawings are not blocked or censored by the Mostar authorities. In other words, people are free to give their city the look they want. However, finding a long-term rental property in good condition can be a bit of a challenge for someone who wants to live in Mostar. This is because the real estate sector in the city is unfortunately not very developed. Most people live in their own homes. The apartments available for rent in the city are mostly tourist-oriented. Businesses find it more profitable and reasonable to rent their apartments to tourists on a daily or weekly basis. Therefore, if you are looking for a place to rent in Mostar, the number of apartments to consider may be ridiculously small. For example, we found 2 rental properties with photos on this local real estate website. One of these apartments has a monthly rent of 600 Bosnian marks, which is the equivalent of 300 euros. The other apartment is more modern and is rented for 900 Bosnian marks per month, which is equivalent to 450 euros. For someone with a monthly income of 1,500 euros or more, these rental prices could be quite reasonable. The cars in the city are similar to those in Sarajevo in terms of balance. Half of the people drive cars that are more than 10 years old. The other half drive modern cars with automatic transmission. You won't see many ultra-luxury cars in the city, because it doesn't make much sense to drive ultra-luxury cars in MOSTAR, my friends. In a city of 97 square kilometers, no one thinks it makes sense to drive a Porsche. Life there is extremely modest and simple. You'll see speed limit signs all over the city. Even if you have an ultra-luxury car in this city, the speed limit is 30 or 40 kilometers per hour in most areas. There is also an interesting situation in the cemeteries of the city. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, they put photos of the deceased on the tombstones. I saw this not only in MOSTAR, but also in Sarajevo. If you go there, you will see portraits of the deceased on the tombstones, and if you are not familiar with this in your country, you will find it interesting. There is no daily vegetable market in the city. People buy their fruits and vegetables at kiosks and supermarkets. I would like to summarize my general observations about MOSTAR. In my opinion, the main elements that keep the city alive, give it life, and make it touristic are the works and dishes left by the Ottoman Empire. The local people have created a service sector in the city with the heritage left by the Ottomans. They are trying to increase the attractiveness of the city by using the heritage left by the Turks, historical elements, traditional motifs, and kebabs such as doner. Thanks to this, the city earns foreign currency and the economy of MOSTAR is kept alive. That was all for our observations about MOSTAR. See you in the next video.